This is Norman Kissinger from Redeeming the Time Brothers Ministries, and we're going to continue with our look at the life of George Muller as biographied by Arthur Pearson, and a book that I found. And I was going over that he had outlined after he went through several chapters of what he thought made George Muller so successful in ministry. And last time I talked a little bit about the one that it was very profound to me, but that idea of that in my prayers or in my seeking ministry for the Lord, am I concerned more about me or my ministry or my life or my problems, or am I concerned about what the Lord wants to accomplish in a situation? And so that one, he was very jealous for his testimony to make sure that nothing that he did was going to be disrespectful to God and God's ministry and God's reputation in a situation. And so something for all of us to probably search our hearts on, especially anyone who's trying to minister for the Lord, to make sure that we're doing it for the right motives. He said three other things, and that will kind of end his list. I know there's been many other principles that I have gleaned out of this book here. But he said that the next thing was that George Muller was very organized in his work. Now, there is something that I'd have to say on a scale from 1 to 10 on a personal level, I'm at about a 5 or 6. I'm pretty organized if you saw my desk at work, but I'm not a super organized person and don't have an organized mind. But I think the idea behind this was that he took God's work seriously. He considered it an important business to be involved in, and therefore he put a lot of effort to make sure that he was doing good strategic planning, as well as finding out what the Lord wanted to do in a matter. But once he figured that something was the Lord's will, then he was very careful to plan it out so that it was done well, efficiently, and according to God's will. So there's kind of those both sides, that willingness to be listening to the Lord, and then the other side to his willingness to have everything planned out as it should be planned out. Now, the last two are, the next one is his sympathy for orphans. Well, we can find that over in the book of James in several places, that helping the widows of the orphans and helping the poor and the destitute is a measure of someone's ministry. It's a measure of their ministry. I mean, that in the book of James, a person is measured by the true religion is taking care of widows and orphans. That if we have a heart to care for the people who can do nothing back for us, that is a measure of kind of God's heart, because it is God-like to give, as somebody said, to give good for evil. It is human-like to give evil for evil, and it is satanic-like to give evil for good. And so George Muller cared about the poor and these orphans, and he discipled them as well as fed them with what he did. The next one was he was guided to be in the exact place that he was supposed to be in to do his ministry. And by that I mean that even though he was born in Prussia, I believe it was, and he was a German by birth, the last one says that God had a specific place where he was most usable. Now that's true for most people. I've talked to many pastors that, and many church workers, that some places they just, they didn't belong there, or for whatever reason, they were not very used where they were at for whatever reason. And then another place they were really, really used well. So the Lord, he was willing to listen to the Lord to be in the field in the place he was supposed to be at. So this German pastor goes to Bristol, England, and that's where he starts the orphanages, and he ministers both in Germany and in England. And because of that, he was very successful in what he did, because he was where God wanted him to be. And that's also something that's important, that location sometimes makes a big difference, that we're where God wants us to be doing the ministry he wants us to do. And so I found these to be very helpful. And in fact, I could probably look and may eventually do a biography of Dwight L. Moody or some other folks that are my favorite characters and personalities and saints of in church history. and find a lot of these same principles in their life. They had different ministries. They were accomplishing different things. They had different personalities. Dwight L. Moody, because I've read on his life, and George Muller would be worlds apart in many ways, but yet they were both successful because a lot of these principles were applied in their life. And so this is definitely true in this case here. And so I hope this is being a blessing to you, but because I have to say that I think that people, I say this all the time in counseling and in teaching, people change people because they're around people. And so for good or bad. So that's the principle of discipleship. So one of the advantages of biographies and books is that I can be, if you will, discipled by even saints that are gone for many years, because I can glean from their lives through the biographies that others or they had written and through the works that they written and that they wrote. So we're able to glean good principles from their life and therefore be blessed and changed. And that's really the principle of growth. Usually what happens is we find somebody else who, through a sermon or their life or watching their life or whatever, somebody comes along and says that there's, we're convicted of heart, there's something we need to start doing or we should be doing in our Christian life. And therefore we begin doing that because of that truth that we find in their life. The Apostle Paul talks about people being living epistles or living letters to other people. And so we're a living letter to the world. And so I hope you find this interesting. I am literally only halfway through this book, and I had a senior college reading level in high school. I wasn't the brightest crayon in the box, maybe with other kinds of schooling, but I have to say that I have a pretty high reading level, and yet it has taken me quite a while to get through this because of how deep it is and the things that I'm learning from it. So as certain things pop out throughout the book, I'll be back on here again to talk about them. I hope this has been helpful. Be sure and watch my brother's podcast and his videos, because they'll be a big help to you as we have in our ministry tried to kind of give out the word of the Lord and teaching and training and fellowship a little bit at a time. So be sure and watch that and be encouraged. God bless you all. You take care.